Your name is Brother Thasian of the Ultramarines, 2nd Company, 4th Squad. You were born on Macragge, raised in the Schola, inducted into the Legion at 17 standard years. You fought in the Great Crusade for 63 years before the heresy began. You need to remember these details. Hold them tight, because soon they'll be all you have left of the person you were. The wound that ended your life came on Calth. You remember the moment with perfect clarity. That's the curse of Dreadnought entombment. Every memory before internment remains crystalline, frozen in time, while everything after becomes a fragmented blur of awakening and sleeping. The word-bearers had betrayed you. Your own brother legions, warriors you'd fought alongside during the crusade, had turned their weapons on you. The orbital bombardment came without warning. Directed energy beams that turned entire cities to glass. Plasma strikes that vaporized battle brothers where they stood. You were leading your squad through the Ithaca Plateau when the second wave hit, a Thunderhawk. Bearing the crimson iconography of the XVJI Legion, screamed overhead and released its payload, plasma warheads. You ordered your brothers to scatter, but there wasn't time. The blast wave hit like the fist of an angry god. You remember flying through the air, your power armor's systems shrieking warnings. You remember hitting the ground 300 meters from the blast site, your armor cracked open like an egg. You remember looking down and seeing your legs were gone. Just cauterized stumps ending at the hip. Your right arm was attached by threads of muscle. Your torso was opened, ribs visible, organs exposed to Calth's poisoned air. You should have died in seconds. But you were Legiones Astartes. Your biology didn't permit easy death. Your secondary heart kicked in when the primary was damaged. Your Susan membrane tried to activate, sending you into hibernation. Your omophagi released enzymes to break down damaged tissue. Your body fought to survive even as it came apart. Your squad found you 40 minutes later. Apothecary Mendax knelt beside you, his narthesium whirring as it assessed your damage. "Brother Sergeant," he said quietly, "your wounds are extensive." You tried to speak, but your lung was collapsed. You managed a nod instead. "I can preserve your gene seed," Mendax continued. His voice was gentle, the tone apothecaries used when death was certain. "You've served with honor. The Emperor will welcome you." "No. You couldn't die. Not here. Not when your brothers needed you. Not when the galaxy was burning and every warrior was needed to fight the betrayal." You forced words through your ruined throat. "Sarcophagus." Mendax hesitated. "Brother Sergeant, the damage is severe. Even Dreadnought interment might not." "Sarcophagus," he repeated. "I will serve." The decision saved your life. Or ended it, depending on perspective. They evacuated you to the Macragg's Gona, Lord Guilliman's flagship. The Medaki facilities there were the finest in the Legion. Banks of stasis fields, Chirajan servitors, apothecaries trained in the most complex surgical procedures. They kept you in stasis for 3 weeks while they debated your fate. You learned this later, after awakening in your new body. The decision whether to inter a battle brother in a Dreadnought sarcophagus wasn't taken lightly. The process was agonizing, the success rate low, and the psychological cost immense. Many brothers who survived internment went mad within years, their minds unable to adapt to existence as a living weapon. But you'd served with distinction. 63 years of crusade, 214 campaigns, 17 commendations from chapter command. You'd trained 3 generations of ultramarines. You'd earned the right to continued service. Lord Guilliman himself authorized your internment. They woke you for the procedure. That was protocol. The interment process required conscious consent at multiple stages. You needed to be aware of what was being done, needed to accept the transformation. The apothecaries gathered around your medical slab. Above you, suspended from chains and surrounded by tech priests, hung your new body, a Contemptor Carpaccia Dreadnought. Haba, laughing, crying, Gao. You'd seen them in battle, of course. The Contemptor was one of the most advanced Dreadnought chassis ever created. Faster than standard patterns, more heavily armored, equipped with atomantic arc reactors that provided nearly limitless power. They were rare even during the Crusade, each one a masterwork of the Mechanicum's finest artisans. And now, one would be yours. Brother Thasian, the lead apothecary said. His name was Calix, and you'd fought alongside him on Monarchia. We will begin the internment process. You understand what this entails. You nodded. You understood. They would remove what remained of your body, everything except your head and essential organs. You would be sealed in an amniotic tank, fed intravenously, kept alive by machines. Your senses would be replaced by augmetic sensors. Your limbs would be Dreadnought weapon systems. Your body would be a walking tomb. I understand, you said. Your voice was weak. I consent. For my crag. For the Emperor. For my brothers. For Macragge, Calix echoed. Begin. The first cut was the worst. They started with your ruined legs, removing what remained. You felt the bone saws grinding through your femurs, felt the cauterization lasers sealing the stumps. The pain was extraordinary, despite the combat-grade anesthetics flooding your system. Then your arms. Your damaged right arm came away easily. The left, still partially functional, they had to sever at the shoulder. You watched it fall away, watched the hand that had wielded a gladius for 63 years tumble into a medical disposal unit. Your torso came next. They stripped away muscle, removed damaged organs, extracted your gene seed for preservation. Your body was reduced to essential components: head, brain, primary heart, lungs, digestive tract reduced to a nutrient processor. They placed you in the amniotic tank, a coffin-shaped container filled with nutrient fluids and surrounded by life support systems. Tubes invaded every orifice. Neural interface cables drilled into your spine. Sensor feeds replaced your eyes. The world went dark for a moment. Then it returned, but wrong, different. You were seeing through the Contemptor's optical sensors now. The world was rendered in strange colors. Thermal overlays, tactical data feeds, range-finding markers. You tried to move your hand, and instead a massive power fist flexed. Servos whining. Neural integration successful, a tech priest reported. Atomantic reactor online. Weapons systems responding. The Contemptor is active. You tried to speak, but no sound emerged from your tank. Instead, a Vox speaker mounted on the Dreadnought's chassis crackled to life, broadcasting your voice with mechanical distortion. Systems. Responding, you managed. Even thinking the words required concentration. Your brain had to learn an entirely new body, had to adapt to controlling something that wasn't organic. Welcome back, Brother Sergeant, Calix said. You are now Venerable Thasian of the Ultramarines. You honor us with your continued service. Venerable, the title given to Dreadnought's warriors who'd sacrificed everything to continue fighting. You were venerable now, ancient, a living relic. You were 37 standard years old. The adaptation period was brutal. Your brain struggled to interpret the sensory data flooding in through augmetic sensors. Temperature readings felt like phantom pain. Auditory inputs were too precise, picking up frequencies human ears couldn't detect. Visual data came in multiple spectrums simultaneously: thermal, electromagnetic, low-light amplification. Walking was worst of all. Your consciousness insisted you still had legs, ghost sensations of feet touching ground, knees bending, muscles flexing. But your actual body was suspended in amniotic fluid, motionless. The disconnect caused vertigo so severe you collapsed during your first attempt to walk, your massive Contemptor chassis crashing to the deck. The tech priests worked with you for weeks. They calibrated your senses, adjusted neural interface settings, taught you to interpret data your human brain wasn't designed to process. Slowly, painfully, you learned to exist as something other than human. You learned to feel through pressure sensors in your power fist, learned to gauge distance through range-finding augers, learned to walk using gyroscopic balance instead of inner-ear equilibrium, learned to speak through vox units instead of vocal cords. You learned to be a weapon instead of a warrior. 3 months after your internment, they declared you combat ready. Your first deployment was against the word-bearers on Armatura. The irony wasn't lost on you, returning to battle against the same legion that had crippled you. The rage you felt was immense, primal. It burned through the sensory confusion and adaptation difficulties, focusing you to a sharp edge. You were assigned to Captain Ventanus's company. He greeted you on the embarkation deck, his face grave. "Venerable Thasian," he said, nodding respectfully, "your presence honors us. The word-bearers will learn the price of their betrayal." "Captain." Your voice emerged as a mechanical growl through the vox speakers. You were still learning to modulate tone. "I'm ready. Point me at the enemy." Ventanus smiled slightly. "Your enthusiasm remains unchanged, brother. That's good. We'll need that in the coming days." The battle was everything you'd hoped for and more. The Contemptor chassis was glorious in combat. You were faster than you'd been in power armor, stronger by an order of magnitude. Your carrier magnetic assault cannon could shred through traitor Astartes like they were mortal flesh. Your power fist could crumple a land raider's hull with a single blow. You carved through the word-bearer's lines like a blade through water. Each kill was vengeance for Calcor, for your fallen squad, for the body you'd lost. The rage that powered you felt righteous and pure. Captain Ventanus fought beside you, his tactical squad supporting your assault. Together you broke the word-bearer's defensive position, allowing the main Ultramarines' force to advance. When the battle ended, you'd personally killed 43 traitor Astartes. Ventanus approached your Contemptor as you stood among the ruins, your chassis decorated with gore and scoring. "Brother Thasian," he said quietly, "that was extraordinary. Your adaptation is remarkable." "I am Ultramarines," you replied simply. "We adapt, we overcome, we endure." "That we do, brother, that we do." You felt pride then, purpose. You'd been given a second chance to serve, and you would make it count. The heresy would be defeated, the Imperium would endure. You would fight for as long as necessary. It was near death. You had no idea how long that would be. You had no idea what you would become, not a warrior defending the dream, but a witness watching it die, one slow century at a time. The heresy lasted for 7 years, though it felt like 7 lifetimes. You fought on 37 different worlds, in orbital battles and planetary sieges, against traitor legions and corrupted army regiments. You witnessed horrors that your human brain struggled to process. Daemons manifesting in real space. Brothers you'd known for decades transformed into twisted monsters. Entire civilizations consumed by the warp. The galaxy was burning, and you were one of the firefighters, desperately trying to contain the blaze. You were there when Lord Guilliman established the Imperium Secundus on Macragge, a contingency plan in case Terra fell. You watched your Primarch shoulder the burden of potentially becoming the Imperium's last hope, saw the weight of responsibility age him in ways combat never had. You were there when Sanguinius arrived with his Blood Angels, when the Lion brought his Dark Angels from Caliban. You stood honor guard when the 3 Primarchs met in council, planning their route to Terra. And you were there for the siege itself. Terra, the throne world, the beating heart of the Imperium. You'd never seen it before the siege. You'd been recruited directly from Macragge and spent your entire service fighting on the frontiers. In your imagination, Built from propaganda and stories, Terra was a gleaming paradise of marble towers and golden spires. The reality was far different. By the time Guilliman's fleet arrived, Terra was a fortress. Every approach was mined with orbital defenses. The palace itself, your destination, sprawled across thousands of kilometers, its walls rising higher than hive spires, its battlements mounted with weapons that could crack starships. And Horus was already there, besieging it with 4 traitor legions and countless corrupted auxiliaries. Your first sight of the siege was through your optical sensors as your drop pod descended through Terra's polluted atmosphere. The planet below was a battlefield on a scale you'd never imagined. Entire sectors burning, siege lines stretching beyond visual range, so many combatants that your tactical systems couldn't count them all. You hit the surface in the anterior Barbican sector, assigned to reinforce the Imperial fists holding the Helios Gate. The battle had been raging for weeks. The defenders were exhausted, their ammunition depleted, their numbers thin. Your Contemptor crashed through a traitor position like a meteor, your assault cannon screaming as it chewed through corrupted soldiers. The Imperial fists rallied around you, their spirits lifted by the arrival of reinforcements. You fought for 37 hours continuously. Your automatic reactor provided limitless power. You never tired, never slowed. You could fight forever if necessary. The traitors learned to fear the sight of your Contemptor. You became known as Thasian's Wrath, a blue and gold giant that appeared wherever the line was breaking, crushing enemy armor and scattering infantry like leaves. You were there when the walls were finally breached. You were there when demons poured through the gaps, reality itself tearing apart to disgorge horrors from the warp. You were there when the Emperor's custodians made their stand, golden warriors fighting against impossible odds. And you were there, standing on the battlements of the Helios Gate, when the news arrived. Horus was dead. The Emperor had slain him aboard the vengeful spirit. The siege was over. The traitors broke and fled. The heresy was finished. You stood among the ruins of Terra, surrounded by the bodies of brothers and enemies alike, and felt empty. Victory should have brought relief, joy. Instead, you felt only exhaustion that went deeper than your mechanical body could experience. The Imperium had survived, but the cost was incomprehensible. Legions were shattered, worlds were dead. The Emperor himself, the light that guided humanity, was mortally wounded, interred within a life-support throne. Everything had changed. Nothing would be the same again. After the siege, there was chaos. The traitor legions had fled into the warp. The loyalist forces were scattered across the galaxy, exhausted and depleted. The Imperium needed to rebuild, reorganize, establish new systems of governance, with the Emperor unable to lead. Lord Guilliman took charge of the Reformation. You witnessed the creation of the Codex Astartes, the document that would reshape the Space Marines from legions into chapters. You watched the Ultramarines Legion break into successor chapters, each taking a portion of the parent legion's heritage. You attended the councils where Primarchs debated the future. Some argued for maintaining legion strength. Others, particularly Guilliman, insisted that such concentrations of power had enabled the heresy and must never be allowed again. The debates were heated. Brothers who'd fought together for decades found themselves opposed on fundamental principles. Eventually, Guilliman's vision prevailed. The Codex Astartes became imperial law. The legions were divided. You remained with the Ultramarines chapter, the inheritors of the parent legion's name and traditions. Your Contemptor was one of fewer than a dozen that survived the heresy. You were precious, irreplaceable, a relic of an age already passing into legend. That's when they began cycling you into stasis between deployments. The Master of the Forge explained it during your first deactivation ceremony. "Venerable Thasian," he said, his voice respectful, "your Contemptor chassis is irreplaceable. The technology to create new ones has been lost. The mechanicum forges that built them were destroyed during the heresy. We must preserve you for as long as possible. He understood the logic, but understanding didn't make it easier to accept. How long between activations, you asked? Decades, perhaps. Centuries, if necessary. We will wake you when the chapter faces threats worthy of your experience. Between those times, you will sleep in honored stasis. Your consciousness will be suspended. No time will pass for you. Decades. Centuries. The words felt abstract, meaningless. You'd never lived through even a full century yet. I serve at the chapter's pleasure, you said formally. If stasis preserves my ability to fight, then I accept it. The master of the forge nodded. Your sacrifice is noted and honored, Venerable One. Sleep well. When you wake, you will be needed. They led you to the Reclusiam, the chamber where dreadnoughts rested between battles. It was a vast, vaulted space deep within the fortress monastery, lined with stasis alcoves. Some held dreadnoughts like you, others held honored relics, armor worn by legendary heroes, weapons that had slain notable enemies. Your alcove was prepared. Tech priests made final adjustments to your systems, ensuring everything was optimal for long-term suspension. You ready, Venerable Thessian? The master of the forge asked. Were you? Could anyone be ready to voluntarily surrender consciousness, to leap forward through time while the galaxy continued without you? I am ready, you said. Then sleep, brother. Dream of victory. When you wake, you will fight again for the Emperor and for Macragge. They activated the stasis field. Your last conscious thought was wondering how much the galaxy would change before you woke. You woke to alarms and emergency protocols flooding your consciousness. Your systems activated instantly, combat-ready, sensors sweeping for threats. You were still in your alcove, but the stasis field was down. Red warning lights pulsed throughout the Reclusium. Venerable Thessian, respond, a voice commanded through your voxlink. This is Thessian, you replied automatically. Your voice sounded strange to your own sensors. Different frequencies, different modulation. How long had you been asleep? Status report. Orc invasion of the Quintan system. War Grimskull has broken through the subsector defenses. The chapter master requests your deployment to Quintan Prime. Acknowledge. Orcs, a threat you understood. You'd fought greenskins during the crusade dozens of times. Acknowledged. I am ready for deployment. Excellent, Venerable One. Proceeding with extraction. Tech priests swarmed your alcove, disconnecting stasis feeds and performing activation rituals. As they worked, you accessed your chronometer, checking how much time had passed since you entered stasis. 67 years. The number hit you like a physical blow. 67 years. Brothers you'd known were likely dead. Even Astartes didn't live forever. The galaxy had moved forward 7 decades while you slept, unaware, trapped in frozen time. Venerable One, can you walk? A tech priest asked. You tested your systems. Everything responded normally. Your Contemptor's machine spirit was calm, ready for battle. Affirmative. All systems nominal. You walked out of the Reclusium for the first time in 67 years. The fortress monastery had changed. New construction, different layouts, unfamiliar decorations. You passed battle brothers you didn't recognize, young warriors who'd been born, recruited, and inducted while you slept. They stared at you with awe. To them you were a legend walking, a warrior from the heresy, a living connection to the chapter's founding. To you, they were strangers. The Quintan campaign lasted 3 months. You fought alongside brothers whose great-grandfathers in service hadn't even been recruited when you entered stasis. You crushed orc armor and tore through greenskin mobs with mechanical efficiency. The tactics had changed slightly. New strategic doctrines, adaptations to the Codex Astartes, but warfare was still warfare. You adapted quickly. When War Grimskull was broken and the Orc warlord slain, the chapter celebrated victory. You stood in the Reclusium during the memorial service for fallen brothers, listening to their names. You didn't know any of them. Afterwards, the chapter master, a warrior named Custer, who you'd never met, approached you. "Venerable Thasian," he said formally, "your service has been exemplary. The chapter is honored by your continued dedication." Chapter master. You inclined your Contemptor's chassis in respect. "I serve as I am able." "Indeed." Castor hesitated, then continued. "We will be returning you to stasis. The Forge Master believes we should preserve your chassis for critical deployments only. I hope you understand." Back to sleep. Back to suspended time, leaping forward through history in jumps, while everyone you knew aged and died. "I understand, Chapter Master. How long until the next activation?" "Unknown. Decades certainly, perhaps longer. We must preserve you, Venerable One. You are irreplaceable." That word again. Irreplaceable. It should have been an honor. Instead, it felt like a curse. "I serve at the chapter's pleasure," you said, because there was nothing else to say. They returned you to stasis. When you woke again, 132 years had passed. The chapter master who'd sent you to sleep was dead. The brothers you'd fought alongside on Quintan were dead. Even the Orc War you'd defeated was forgotten. Just another footnote in the Imperium's endless wars. You fought a brief campaign against Dark Eldar raiders, then returned to stasis. You woke, fought, slept, woke again. 200 years passed, 300, 500. "Does later live on?" I said. "I do." Each awakening was the same: emergency deployment, combat, victory, return to stasis. Each awakening showed you a galaxy slightly more changed, a chapter slightly more different from what you remembered. The brothers were strangers, the tactics evolved, the threats changed. But you remained, constant, unchanging, locked in time, a relic of an age that was slowly becoming myth. You began to understand what you'd really lost when they interred you in the Contemptor. Not your body, not your humanity. Your time, your continuity, your connection to the flow of history. You were becoming a ghost, haunting a galaxy that continued without you. And the worst part was knowing it would never end. You would wake and fight and sleep for centuries, millennia, forever. You were Venerable Thasian of the Ultramarines, and you were completely, utterly alone. The third awakening showed you something you couldn't rationalize away. You emerged from stasis to find the Reclusium transformed. Where once there had been simple alcoves and honored relics, now there were shrines. Candles flickered in brass holders, incense burners hung from chains, filling the air with scented smoke. Parchment scrolls covered the walls, each one inscribed with devotional text. And everywhere, the Aquila had been replaced by symbols you didn't recognize. Skulls wreathed in flames. Gothic script proclaiming the Emperor's divinity. Venerable Thasian. A figure approached, wearing power armor but draped in robes. His armor was black instead of Ultramarines blue. "I am Chaplain Orestes. Welcome back to the waking world." Chaplain. You knew the term. Legion officers responsible for maintaining morale and discipline. But this warrior's bearing was different. He carried a Crozius Arcanum instead of a Gladius, and when he spoke, his words had the cadence of prayer. "Chaplain," you acknowledged. "How long has it been?" 843 years since your last deployment, Venerable One. The chapter requires your wisdom and strength. Heretic Astartes have been sighted in the Gehenna subsector, fallen brothers from the Emperor's Children Legion. 843 years. The number was almost meaningless. You'd now been asleep longer than you'd been alive before internment. But something else troubled you more than the time differential. The Emperor's children are traitors, he said carefully. Not heretics. They betrayed the Imperium, but they are heretics, Orestes interrupted, his voice firm. They have turned from the Emperor's light and worshipped false gods. They are damned in his eyes, and we are his angels of death, delivering divine judgment. Something was wrong. Orestes spoke of the Emperor in religious terms. Light, worship, divine judgment. These weren't the words you'd heard during the Crusade, or even during the heresy's aftermath. The Emperor forbade religious worship, he said slowly. The imperial truth rejected superstition in favor of reason, and the imperial truth was a necessary deception, Orestes said. A test of faith. Only after his martyrdom did we understand his true divine nature. He sits upon the golden throne, watching over humanity, blessing his servants and damning his enemies. The golden throne. You knew that term, the life support device keeping the Emperor alive after Horus mortally wounded him. But martyrdom? Divine nature? These concepts contradicted everything the Crusade had stood for. Where did this change occur, you asked? Orestes looked confused. Change, Venerable One, the Emperor has always been divine. The Ecclesiarchy has taught this truth for millennia. Surely you... The Ecclesiarchy, the Adeptus Ministorum, the priesthood of the imperial cult. They guide humanity's faith, ensure proper worship of the God Emperor across... Stop. Your vox speakers crackled with distortion, your agitation interfering with vocal modulation. The Emperor specifically forbade organized religion. The Lectitio Divinitatis was banned. This is heresy. Orestes' expression hardened. Venerable Thasian, I understand your confusion. You have been asleep for centuries. Much has changed. But questioning the Emperor's divinity borders on blasphemy. I suggest you... I fought beside Guilliman, you interrupted. I heard our Primarch speak the Emperor's words directly. I was there when the imperial truth was policy, not historical curiosity. What you're describing isn't evolution. It's corruption of everything we fought to build. Silence fell in the reclusiam. Several tech priests stopped their work, their augmetic eyes fixed on you. Orestes' hand moved to his Crozius, not threatening but ready. Venerable One, he said quietly, we will discuss this matter later. For now, the chapter requires your service against the Emperor's enemies. Will you deploy? You wanted to refuse, wanted to demand explanations, to understand how the Imperium had gone from reason to superstition. But you were a warrior. The chapter called. You would answer. I will deploy, you said. But Chaplain, this conversation is not finished. No, Orestes agreed. It is not. The campaign against the Emperor's children was brutal and disturbing. The traitors had established a fortress on Gehenna III, corrupting the local population and transforming the planet's capital into a nightmarish reflection of their debauchery. Your strike force deployed directly into the heart of enemy territory. 5 squads of tactical marines, 2 devastator squads, and you. You'd fought Emperor's children before during the heresy. They'd been formidable opponents even then, perfectionist warriors obsessed with martial excellence. But these traitors were different, changed. They'd become monsters. Their armor was decorated with obscene imagery. Their bodies were mutated, extra limbs, distorted features, skin that rippled with unnatural colors. They fought with manic intensity, laughing and screaming in voices that weren't entirely human. But worst of all, you recognized one of them. He was a champion leading a war band, his armor purple and gold, his weapons crackling with warp energy. Something about his fighting style was familiar, the way he moved, the patterns of his attacks. You accessed ancient memory files, comparing current data with records from before your internment. The match came back positive. Captain Eidolon, you said through external vox speakers. 3rd Company, Emperor's Children Legion. I fought beside you on Laren during the Crusade. The champion paused, his mutated head tilting. When he spoke, his voice was distorted by inhuman vocal cords. Laren. Yes, I remember such exquisite sensations during that campaign. And you are Thasian, the ultramarine who challenged me to that marksmanship contest? Memory flooded back. A different lifetime, when the legions were united. You and Eidolon, competing to see who could achieve more headshots against Lair infantry, turning slaughter into sport. It had been inappropriate even then, but you'd both been young and arrogant. I remember, you said. What happened to you, brother? How did you fall so far? Eidolon laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Fall. Thasian, I ascended. I experienced sensations you cannot imagine. Pain and pleasure beyond mortal comprehension. I've been blessed by she who thirsts, elevated to something greater than the Emperor's failed vision. You're corrupted, lost. This isn't elevation, it's damnation. Then I am damned and glorious for it. Eidolon charged, his weapons blazing. The fight was brief and vicious. Eidolon was fast, augmented by warp-tainted blessings, but your Contemptor's weapons had range and power he couldn't match. Your assault cannon tore through his armor, your power fist crushed his mutated body. As he died, Eidolon laughed. You're already dead, Thasian. Entombed in that metal coffin, pretending you're still alive. At least I embraced change. You're just preserved meat in a can. His words haunted you long after his body stopped twitching. The campaign lasted 2 months. You cleansed Gehenna 3 of corruption, destroyed the Emperor's Children fortress, and liberated what remained of the civilian population. During the victory ceremony, Chaplain Orestes led the brothers in prayer. We thank the God Emperor for his blessing in this battle. We praise his holy might, which guided our weapons and shielded our bodies. In his name, we have delivered righteous judgment upon the heretic and the daemon. Praise be to the Emperor now and forever. Praise be, the assembled brothers responded in unison. You said nothing. Afterwards, Chapter Master Fenian, a warrior you'd never met before this campaign, summoned you to a private meeting. Venerable Thasian, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Chaplain Orestes has expressed concerns about your comments regarding the Imperial cult. I expressed confusion, you replied. The Imperium I fought for rejected religious worship. Now I wake to find the Emperor declared divine and an entire priesthood established in his name. I seek to understand this change. Fenian nodded slowly. I understand your confusion, Venerable One. But you must understand. The galaxy has changed in 10,000 years. The Imperial cult provides hope to billions. Faith in the Emperor sustains the Imperium through darknesses you cannot imagine. The Emperor forbade this, you insisted. He called religion humanity's greatest weakness. The Emperor is a god, Fenian said flatly. His miracles are documented. His saints perform wonders in his name. Living saints walk among us, channeling his divine power. How can you deny his divinity when the evidence surrounds us? I deny nothing except the corruption of his original vision. He wanted humanity to embrace reason, to Venerable Thasian. Fenian's voice hardened. You are a hero of the chapter. Your service during the heresy is legendary. But if you continue to question the Emperor's divinity, you force me to consider whether your long sleep has damaged your judgment. The threat was clear. Question too loudly, and you'd be declared defective, possibly even corrupted. They might dismantle you, extract your gene seed, and destroy the consciousness that had served for over a millennium. You understood then the position you occupied. You were a relic, honored, but ultimately disposable. Your value lay in your symbolism and your combat effectiveness. If you threatened, either by questioning accepted doctrine, you would be removed. I understand, Chapter Master, he said quietly. I will not question further. Good. Fenion relaxed slightly. Return to stasis, Venerable One. Sleep. When you wake next, perhaps you'll have adjusted to the realities of the modern Imperium. They returned you to stasis with a new understanding. You were a prisoner as much as a warrior. Prisoner of time, of changing doctrine, of an Imperium that had abandoned everything you'd fought to build. And there was nothing you could do about it, except sleep and wake and watch the decay continue. The fourth awakening was worse. You emerged to find the galaxy literally broken. The tech priests explained while they activated your systems. A massive warp rift called the Cicatrix Maledictum had torn reality in half. Entire sectors were cut off from Terra. Demons poured through breaches in real space. The Imperium was besieged on all fronts. And worse, the Primarchs were returning. Not all of them. But Guilliman had awakened from his own stasis, returned to lead the Imperium through the crisis. Your Primarch, the leader you'd served under during the heresy, returned after 10,000 years. When will I see him? You asked immediately. When will Lord Guilliman visit the chapter? The tech priest's response crushed your hope. The Lord Regent has not visited Macragge since his resurrection. He is engaged in the Indomitus Crusade, leading the Primaris Marine forces across the Imperium Nihilus. Primaris Marines. The term was unfamiliar. Explain. They told you about the Primaris project. New space marines, created from improved gene seed, larger and stronger than original Astartes. They'd been developed in secret for 10,000 years and released by Guilliman to reinforce the depleted chapters. The space marines, improved versions of what you'd been. Are they replacing us? You asked. No, Venerable One. They augment existing chapters, but yes, they are superior in many physical aspects. Faster, stronger, more resilient. Superior. The word felt like a blade. You'd given everything, your body, your life, your continuity, to serve as a space marine, and now you are obsolete, replaced by better models. Not even the best warrior in the room anymore, just a museum piece that could still fight. You began tracking your awakenings after the 12th one. They'd given you access to your own chronological data, a gesture meant to honor your long service, but which instead became a tool for measuring your isolation. You created a log, recording each awakening, each deployment, each period of stasis sleep. The pattern was clear. You woke on average every 173 years. Some gaps were shorter, a mere 50 years when the chapter faced critical threats. Others stretched for 3 centuries or more when your specific capabilities weren't needed. You'd been awakened 53 times, over 10,000 years. 53 snapshots of the Imperium, spread across 100 centuries. Each awakening showed you decay. Slow, relentless, undeniable decay of everything the Emperor had built. The 15th awakening. M34, the age of apostasy. You deployed against rebels on Terra itself. The ecclesiarchy had become so corrupt that a madman named Vandier had seized control of the Imperium. You fought alongside the Sisters of Battle, an all-female militant order that hadn't existed in your time, to restore sanity. The Imperium you defended during the heresy was now fighting itself. The vision of unity had collapsed into bureaucratic nightmare. The 23rd awakening. M37. During the waning, warp storms isolated entire sectors. You fought against cultist uprisings on a dozen worlds, watching Imperial citizens turn to chaos because they believed the Emperor had abandoned them. The faith that was supposed to sustain humanity was hollow. When tested, it broke, and people embraced damnation rather than stand alone. The 31st awakening. M39. During the Age of Redemption. The ecclesiarchy launched a crusade to reclaim lost faith. You witnessed priests burning entire populations accused of insufficient devotion. The Imperium was devouring itself in the name of purity. You tried to speak against it, tried to explain that the Emperor had never wanted this religious mania. They accused you of heresy and locked you in stasis for 218 years. The 37th Awakening, M41, shortly before the opening of the Great Rift. The Imperium had become a parody of itself. A trillion-strong bureaucracy, strangled by its own regulations, where human life was cheaper than the paper documenting its expenditure. You watched Astro Militarum regiments march into hopeless battles, ordered to die by commanders who'd never seen combat. You watched hive worlds grind their populations into corpse starch to meet food quotas. You watched inquisitors burn planets on suspicion of taint. The Imperium was supposed to defend humanity. Now it was humanity's greatest threat. And through it all, you remained unchanging, unaging, watching the slow mammography apocalypse unfold across millennia. The 45th Awakening brought you face to face with the Primaris. You emerged from stasis to find your reclusium shared with 6 Primaris dreadnoughts. Redemptor packed matter, newer designs with more advanced systems. The tech priests explained that the Primaris used different dreadnought chassis, reflecting their enhanced physiology. One of the Redemptor pilots was already active, performing system checks. His designation was Brother Caster, the same name as that long-dead chapter master from your 3rd Awakening. Venerable Thasian, Caster said, his vox speakers crisp and clear. An honor to meet a legend. Your service record is extraordinary. Brother Caster, you replied, how long have you served in that chassis? 17 years since internment. I fell during the Plague Wars against Mortarian's Death Guard. 17 years. You'd served in your Contemptor for over 8,000 years of subjective awakening time. Your Primaris, you observed. Yes, Venerable One. 1st generation Primaris, created from the Ultramarines gene line. How do you find the transition from flesh to Dreadnought? Caster was quiet for a moment. Difficult. The sensory disconnect is challenging. I miss simple things, tasting food, feeling the sun, but I serve the Emperor and the chapter. That purpose sustains me. His words could have been yours, centuries ago. The same sentiment, the same dedication. How old were you when you fell? You asked. 63 standard years. I'd served 45 years as a battle brother before internment. 63 years. You'd been 37 when they interred you. You'd been younger than most dreadnoughts, and now you were older than almost all of them. Tell me, Brother Caster, what do they teach you about the Emperor, about his vision for the Imperium? Caster's response was immediate, rehearsed. The God Emperor guides humanity through the darkness. His divine will protects us from the daemon and the Xenos. Through faith in his holy light, we shall prevail against all enemies. Religious doctrine, rote catechism, nothing about the imperial truth, about reason over superstition, about the secular vision that had powered the Great Crusade. And what if I told you the Emperor rejected divine worship, that he called religion humanity's greatest weakness? Castor's vox speakers crackled with static. Confusion or concern? Venerable One, that contradicts all teachings. The Emperor has always been divine. The ecclesiarchy is a corruption, he said quietly. The imperial cult is heresy by the Emperor's own standards. Everything you've been taught about his divinity is a lie, built on 10,000 years of institutional momentum. Venerable Thasian, a new voice interrupted. Chaplain Mordred, the current spiritual leader of your strike force, your words border on blasphemy. I must insist you cease this theological speculation. You turned your optical senses toward Mordred. It's not speculation, it's memory. I was there, Chaplain. I heard the Emperor's words directly through Guilliman. I fought for the imperial truth before you were born. before your grandfathers in service were born. The past is past, Mordred said firmly. The present requires faith, not doubt. Your memories are honored, Venerable One, but they cannot be allowed to undermine current doctrine. Erase so quickly I must forget. Pretend I don't remember what the Imperium was supposed to be. You must adapt, Mordred said. As we all must. The galaxy has changed. The Imperium has changed. You can either accept this, or... He left the threat unfinished. Or be silenced, locked away, declared defective and decommissioned. You understood the choice. Comply or be destroyed. I understand, Chaplain, you said. The words tasted like ashes, even filtered through Vox speakers. After Mordred left, Castor spoke quietly. Venerable One, is it true, what you said about the Emperor? He wanted to tell him everything, wanted to explain how the dream had rotted, how the vision had been corrupted. But Castor was young, even in Dreadnought terms, and he needed faith to sustain himself. Taking that away would be cruel. It doesn't matter, you said finally. The past is dead, Brother Castor. Only the present exists. Focus on your duty. Let the rest fade away. It was the advice you wished someone had given you centuries ago. The 50th awakening was the worst. You emerged to find Primaris Marines everywhere. They outnumbered the original Astartes 3-1 in your strike force. They were larger, their armor more advanced, their weapons more powerful. And they looked at you like you were ancient history. One of them, a Primaris intercessor named Severus, approached you before deployment. His manner was respectful but curious, like a student examining an artifact. Venerable Thasian, he said, may I ask you about the Siege of Terra? We study it in tactical doctrine, but you were actually there. What was it like? What was it like? How could you explain the siege to someone who hadn't lived through the heresy? How could you convey the horror of watching brothers turn traitor? Of seeing demons tear through reality? Of standing on Terra's walls while the galaxy burned? It was necessary, you said simply. We fought because the alternative was extinction. The records say you personally slew hundreds of traitors during the defense of the Helios Gate. I did what was required, as all warriors do. Severus nodded, but you could see disappointment in his expression. He had wanted stories, dramatic tales of heroism. Instead, you'd given him dry facts. Because the truth was, you couldn't remember most of the siege anymore. The details had faded, eroded by millennia of stasis sleep and the cerebral limitations of Dreadnought existence. You remembered impressions, fear, determination, exhaustion. But the specific moments had blurred together. You were forgetting your own history. The memories that defined you were degrading, while the galaxy moved on without you. How more question, Venerable One, Severus said. Why did you choose internment? You could have died honorably on Calth. Why accept this existence? Why? The question you'd asked yourself 53 times, once per awakening. I thought I was choosing continued service, you said slowly. I thought I'd wake occasionally, fight, then sleep again. I didn't understand what 10,000 years meant. Didn't understand I'd become a ghost, watching everyone I knew die while I remained unchanged. Do you regret it? Did you? The honest answer was complicated. You regretted the isolation, the disconnection, the slow realization that you'd become irrelevant. But you'd also served the chapter for millennia, slain enemies beyond counting, defended the Imperium across 100 centuries. Ask me again in another 10,000 years, you said. Severus laughed, thinking it was a joke. You weren't joking. The 53rd awakening, the most recent one, showed you the final truth. You emerged from stasis to find Macragge transformed. The fortress monastery had been rebuilt with new architecture. Primaris Marines dominated the chapter. New vehicles, new weapons, new everything. and Lord Guilliman had finally returned. Your Primarch walked among his sons again, resurrected by alien technology and mechanicus science. He'd reorganized the Imperium, launched the Indomitus Crusade, brought new hope to a galaxy drowning in darkness. But he didn't visit the Reclusiam, didn't meet with the ancient Dreadnoughts, didn't acknowledge the warriors who'd served him during the heresy. You were scheduled for deployment against a Necron awakening. Before leaving, you submitted a formal request to meet with Lord Guilliman, to speak with your Primarch, to tell him you'd survived, to seek guidance from the leader you'd followed 10,000 years ago. The request was denied. The Lord Regent's schedule permits no non-critical meetings. Your service is noted and honored, Venerable Thusian, but direct communication is not feasible at this time. Not feasible. Your Primarch, the being you'd sworn oaths to, had bled for, had died for, couldn't spare time to speak with you. You had to check in with you and speak with him, as much as he had to speak with you, because you weren't important anymore. You were a relic, a museum piece that could still fight, valuable for your symbolism, but not worth the Lord Regent's actual attention. That's when you finally understood your purpose in this new Imperium. You weren't a warrior. You were a witness. Your role was to wake, observe the decay, fight whatever battle they assigned you, and return to sleep. You existed to bridge the gap between the glorious past and the degraded present, to remind the younger generations that things were once different. But you couldn't change anything, couldn't stop the decay, couldn't restore the vision. You could only watch, remember, and suffer. And you would do so for another 10,000 years, maybe more. This was your curse, more complete than any demon could devise, to remain conscious across eternity, watching everything you loved rot away, powerless to stop it. You were Brother Thusian of the Ultramarines, and you were the loneliest being in the galaxy. The current deployment was supposed to be routine. Necron Tomb World awakening in the Gehenna subsector, the same region where you'd fought Emperor's children 8 centuries ago, though of course the Imperium had forgotten that campaign. The records were lost, buried under millennia of accumulated data. You remembered. You always remembered. Your strike force consisted of 3 tactical squads, 1 Devastator squad, 2 Primaris Intercessor squads, 4 Primaris Heavy Intercessor, and you, Captain Theron commanded. A Primaris Marine, who'd been chapter master for 30 years. To him, 30 years was a lifetime of command experience. To you, it was barely noticeable. The tomb world was designated Gehenna 7. Initial scans showed a minor awakening. Perhaps 1,000 Necron warriors, some immortals, possibly a few tomb blades. A standard containment operation. Deploy, eliminate the threat, sanitize the tomb, extract. But when you made planetfall, something was wrong. The tomb complex was far larger than scans indicated. The Necrons weren't just awakening. They were fully active, organized, and waiting. You walked into a trap. The ambush came 30 minutes after landing. Gauss weapons fired from concealed positions, green energy beams that flayed molecular bonds and reduced matter to constituent atoms. 3 brothers died before they could seek cover, their armor and bodies disintegrating into atomic clouds. "Fall back," Captain Theron ordered. "Defensive positions around Venerable Thusian." The Necrons advanced in perfect synchronization. Hundreds of warriors, gleaming metal skeletons that had once been living beings, but were now soulless machines. Behind them came larger constructs, immortals with heavier weapons, Lich Guard wielding war scythes, Canoptech wraiths phasing through solid matter. Your assault cannon screamed, sending streams of mass-reactive shells into the Necron lines. Metal bodies exploded, torn apart by the high-velocity impacts. Your power fist crushed a Lich Guard, compacting its living metal frame into a ball of compacted alloy. But they kept coming. For every Necron you destroyed, 2 more emerged from the tomb complex. "This is wrong," Uvox transmitted to Captain Theron. These numbers don't match initial scans. We're facing a full dynasty awakening, not a minor emergence. Acknowledged, Venerable One. I'm calling for extraction and orbital support. But the extraction didn't come. Necron anti-aircraft systems had activated, filling the sky with gauze fire that shredded any Imperial craft attempting descent. You were cut off, surrounded, outnumbered 10-1. The battle turned into a siege. Your strike force established a defensive perimeter around a collapsed temple structure, using the ruins for cover. The Necrons didn't charge mindlessly. They advanced methodically, using suppressing fire to restrict movement while flanking units maneuvered for advantage. They were using tactics from the War in Heaven, strategies older than the Imperium by 60 million years. You'd fought Necrons before, during previous awakenings, but these were different. Coordinated by an intelligence that understood warfare at a fundamental level. Overlord, you said over Command Vox. There's a Necron overlord directing this engagement. We need to identify and eliminate it. Agreed, Theron replied. Venerable Thasian, can you draw out their commander? You're our most durable unit. Of course you were. The ancient Dreadnought sent forward as bait because you could survive longer under fire than the flesh and blood warriors. Affirmative, Captain. Advancing now. You strode forward from the defensive perimeter, your Contemptor's massive frame making you an obvious target. Gauss fire converged on you immediately. Dozens of beams striking your armor, ablating layers of blessed ceramite and adamantium. Your sensors registered critical damage warnings. Another 30 seconds of concentrated fire would breach your chassis. But the plan worked. The Necron Overlord revealed itself. It emerged from the tomb complex on a hovering throne, a towering construct of living metal, its body decorated with dynastic glyphs that predated humanity's evolution. In one hand, it carried a war scythe, crackling with dimensional energy. Its single optical sensor fixed on you with unmistakable intelligence. When it spoke, its voice was transmitted through electromagnetic frequencies your sensors could interpret. The Starte's Dreadnought. You persist in a broken shell, clinging to false purpose. I know your suffering. I endured biotransference, the theft of flesh, the imprisonment in immortal metal. You and I are kindred. Corpses walking, pretending we still live. The words hit harder than any Gauss blast. I am not like you, you transmitted back. I serve willingly, you were enslaved. Were you? The Overlord asked. Did you truly choose internment, or was it the only alternative to death? Do you serve willingly, or because you've forgotten how to do anything else? I have existed for 60 million years, warrior. You've endured only 10,000. Already you understand the curse. Imagine it stretched across eternity. 60 million years. The number was incomprehensible. You'd thought 10,000 years was unbearable, but 60 million, how could consciousness survive that long? How could purpose persist across such spans? If you understand the curse, you said, then end it. We'll end ours together. The Overlord laughed, a sound like grinding gears. No. You will live, you will continue your service, wake and sleep and wake again, until you've experienced what I have. Until you understand that existence without end is the greatest punishment the universe can devise. Only then will you comprehend true despair. The Overlord raised its war scythe, and reality itself seemed to bend. Captain Theron's plasma blast struck the Overlord's back, detonating its power core in a miniature star. The Necron commander had time for one final transmission. We are the same Dreadnought, both damned, both eternal. Then it disintegrated into atomic vapor. Without the Overlord's coordination, the Necron forces lost cohesion. You and the surviving brothers fought for another 6 hours, gradually pushing back the mechanical warriors until orbital bombardment could be safely deployed. The tomb complex was sterilized from orbit. Cyclonic torpedoes cracked the planet's crust, burying the remaining Necrons under kilometers of molten rock. Your strike force extracted with 40% casualties. You'd survived, your Contemptor chassis damaged but repairable. During the return voyage, Captain Theron visited you in the maintenance bay, where tech priests worked on your armor. "Venerable Thasian," he said quietly, "what the Necron overlord said to you, what did it mean?" "Nothing, Captain. The ravings of a Xenos machine. It seemed to affect you. How could you explain? How could you tell this young warrior, Primaris born, barely a century old, that the Necron had voiced the truth you'd been avoiding for millennia? You were damned, not by chaos or Xenos or any external force. Damned by time itself, by the endless continuation of consciousness past any reasonable span. It recognized what I am, you said finally, a prisoner in metal, forced to continue past natural limits. The difference is, I still have purpose. I still serve the chapter, the Primarch, the Emperor. That meaning sustains me." "Does it?" Theron asked gently. "Forgive my presumption, Venerable One, but I've read your service logs. 53 awakenings over 10,000 years. Each time you wake, the galaxy is more changed. Each time you fight, it's alongside strangers. Each time you sleep, everyone you knew dies. How can you sustain purpose through that?" You didn't answer immediately. The tech priests continued their work, replacing damaged armor plates, reconsecrating systems, preparing you for the next stasis cycle. "Finally, I don't know anymore, Captain. Initially, I served because I believed in the Emperor's vision, the Imperial truth, humanity united through reason. But that vision is dead. Now I wake to an Imperium I barely recognize, fighting for ideals I don't share, alongside brothers who see me as a relic rather than a warrior. Then why continue? Because the alternative is choosing extinction. And despite everything, despite the isolation, the anachronism, the endless cycle, I still believe humanity deserves to survive, even this corrupted version, even this nightmare mockery of what we built." Theron was quiet for a long moment. Then, "The chapter honors your sacrifice, Venerable Thasian. Your continued service across the millennia inspires us all." After he left, you accessed your chronological log and made a new entry. After Awakening 53, Gehenna 7, Necron Tomb Purge, casualties acceptable. Encountered enemy commander who understood the nature of my existence. His words were, "Both damned, both eternal." He was correct. I have served for 10,000 years. I may serve for 10,000 more. The Emperor's vision is dead, replaced by religious mania I would have called heresy during the Crusade. The brothers I knew are dust. The Primarch I served has returned, but doesn't acknowledge my existence. The Imperium I fought for has become a grotesque parody of itself. And yet I continue. Perhaps that is the greatest tragedy. Not that I'm cursed to witness the decay, but that I'm cursed to care about it. If I could stop caring, if I could become the mindless weapon they seem to want, this existence would be bearable. But I remember, and remembering is my torment. Log entry ends, returning to stasis. The tech priests completed your repairs and escorted you back to the Reclusium. Your alcove waited, ready to receive you, ready to freeze you in time once again. Before they activated the stasis field, the Master of the Forge performed the traditional blessing. Sleep well, Venerable Thasian. Dream of victory. When you wake, you will be needed once more. You wanted to tell him you didn't dream during stasis, that consciousness simply stopped, a blank void between awakening, neither restful nor aware, but you said nothing. Let them have their rituals and comfort. The stasis field activated. Your last thought before suspension was a calculation. If you woke on average every 173 years, and you'd already endured 10,000 years, you'd wake approximately 58 more times per 10,000 years. If you survived another 10,000 years, that would be 111 awakenings total. If you survived 20,000 years, not impossible given the durability of Contempt chassis, that would be 222 awakenings, each one showing you further decay, each one taking you further from the galaxy you understood, each one making you more obsolete, more irrelevant, more alone. You would watch the Imperium rot across eternity, powerless to stop it, unable to die. You would become what the Necron Overlord already was, a consciousness stretched across impossible spans of time, sustained past any reasonable endpoint, damned to witness everything it valued turn to dust. And the worst part, the truly unbearable part, was that you would survive it all. You were Brother Thasian of the Ultramarines, Venerable One, hero of the heresy. And you were condemned to live forever. You wake. Systems activate automatically, combat protocols engaging before consciousness fully returns. Your optical sensors focus, scanning for threats. Your weapon systems perform automated diagnostic. All systems nominal. Contempt or chassis functional. Atomantic reactor operating at optimal capacity. You access your chronometer. 247 years have passed since your last awakening. You are needed again. The Master of the Forge's voice crackles through your Vox receivers. Venerable Thasian, welcome back. The chapter requires your service. Awakening 54, commencing. 54. You've now woken 54 times across 10 millennia. You will wake again. And again. You will serve and sleep and serve and sleep until the Imperium falls, or the galaxy ends, or your chassis finally fails beyond repair. Fall from here or say, retire. You will witness the continued decay of everything you fought to build. You will remain alone. A ghost, haunting a history that no longer remembers you. This is your fate. This is your honor. This is your curse. You are Venerable Thasian of the Ultramarines, and you are condemned to watch forever.